Hey, welcome everybody to today's class. Today we're going to do a little bit of IELTS informal letter. I have a student who's taking IELTS soon, and he would like to do some work with informal letters. I actually think the informal letter is easier in some ways than the formal letter, although I do understand why my student wants to do this one, and it's because he explained there are a lot of websites out there that give you very good expressions to use in a formal letter, but there aren't so many websites or books available that give you expressions to use in an informal letter, and that's why we're going to practice informal today. And I know what he means. There are a lot of formal set expressions that you can just use. Things like, I am writing to inform you that, or that kind of thing. Good morning. And so we're going to look at how to write with an informal style. I'll see if I can do this in the class today and pretty much get most of the informal letter. But this is the task that I've decided to use for today. I'll quickly turn off the TV so that it's, or the monitor, so that we don't get it shining on the board. And we've got the task. You have arranged to visit a friend in Canada, but an important event means that you must change the date of your visit. Now, this is where you have to use your imagination and think of what means that you have to change the date of your visit. Now, explain the important event. So use your imagination, yeah? You've got to think of something that has stopped you visiting Canada. Now, I really do recommend that you put yourself in this situation and that you imagine something that might happen that will mean that you have to cancel your trip to Canada. Of course, you've got to apologize for the situation as well. So certainly do all three of these things, otherwise you are guaranteeing yourself a low mark. Yeah? If you don't answer all three things, then you're not answering the question properly, and I guarantee you will not get a good mark. So please do all three things. Explain what came up to make you cancel your trip to Canada. Apologize for the fact that you're cancelling your trip to Canada, and suggest some kind of new arrangement. Okay, you must do those three things. Always at the end, when you're doing this task, please, when you've finished, you've done your essay and you've got a few minutes left, read the text again and just check and think, have I clearly answered all three of those questions? Because sometimes you might think you've clearly answered it, but then you realise that you haven't actually said sorry in the letter, and so you haven't apologised, and so, you know, be careful. I've seen it quite a few times that students think they've answered all three, but it's just in their opinion that they've answered all three, and when you look through the letter carefully you realise that they haven't apologised, or they haven't suggested a new arrangement, or they haven't even explained in detail the important event. And so you must do all three to get a high mark. So let's just make something up right now. You've only got to use 150 words at least in this part, and that's very few words. So please make every sentence count. I often say this, that students want to, they want to write 150 words, and so they think, put in as many words as possible, even words that don't matter. That's the wrong way to do this part of the exam. That will not get you a good mark. What you really need to do is make every word count, make every sentence count, because you've got a lot to do in a very short space. So please don't just throw words in there to try to beef up the word count. That's not how to get the best mark. So start in a typical way to start when you're talking to a friend is, dear Anna. Why not? Let's do it the standard way. Dear Anna. Anna's your friend in Canada. So let's start with a nice greeting. It's normal to just greet the person firstly. So something like, dear Anna, you could even say, dear Anna, let's start. Dear Anna, how are you? Yeah, let's start by finding out how she is. How are you? I'm afraid to say, or I'm sorry to say, that I won't be coming to Canada anymore. I won't be coming to Canada in in January. Yeah, I'm just making this up. Why not? I won't be coming to Canada in January as I expected. Or I won't be coming to Canada in January as I had planned, something like that. But let's just have it with, I won't be coming to Canada in January. Yeah, so I'm getting straight to the task. I just want to answer this, and I want to get to this part. An important event means you must change the date of your visit. So at the moment, there aren't any planes, are there? I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the airports have closed down, and if I were going to Canada, let's say in April, it's March at the moment, yeah? If I were going to Canada in April, I would have to cancel my visit. And so I'm going to use that personally, but you can use any explanation that you like. But because the airports have closed down, I'm going to use that. So, dear Anna, how are you? I'm sorry to say that I won't be coming to Canada in April. I'm sure you've heard... I'm sure you've heard that all the airports, or that all the Canadian airports have closed, or that all of our airports. Now, do put where you live. I'm sure you've, maybe you're there in, I don't know, in Hungary. So I'm sure you've heard that all our airports in Budapest, or something like that, all our airports in Budapest have closed. Okay, so I'm already explaining this important event that's come up, that stopped me coming to Canada. Have closed is correct, yeah? Close is an ergative verb, and if you want to see why it's have closed instead of have been closed, although have been closed is also correct, if you want to understand why that's the case, please look for ergative verbs and you'll find some more information on that video. So, I'm sure you've heard that all our airports in Budapest have closed. This means that I won't be able to come in April, but let's try not to repeat too much here. So, I'm sure you've heard that all of our airports in Budapest have closed. Unfortunately, this means my trip has been cancelled. Yeah, my flight has been cancelled. Okay, so that's all clear. Unfortunately, this means my flight has been cancelled. So you're explaining the important event that's come up that means you must change the date of your visit. And really do go into detail here because, you know, they do expect some detail about why. Not too much that you aren't able to apologise and suggest new arrangements, but certainly explain exactly why you're not able to go to Canada. Make it clear why you're not able to go to Canada and make it convincing and realistic, because if it seems too weird or odd, again, it's not going to get a high mark. But this is convincing, obviously. So how are you? I'm sorry to say that I won't be coming to Canada in April. I'm sure you've heard that all our airports in Budapest have closed. Unfortunately, this means my flight has been cancelled. I might even continue this with a fanboys conjunction. I am really sorry. Yeah, here is the apology. So I am really sorry, but we must make other arrangements. I'm really sorry, but we must make other arrangements. Yeah, and then you've got the word sorry, and I would put the word sorry somewhere in there if you're told to apologise for the situation. Yeah, it just makes it clear that they see the word sorry and they've already like tick, you've done that, you've answered that question. Yeah, so do have it in there somewhere. So, dear Anna, how are you? I'm sorry to say that I won't be coming to Canada in April. I'm sure that you've heard that all our airports in Budapest have closed. Unfortunately, this means that my flight has been cancelled. So I'm really sorry, but we must make other arrangements. Like that. Probably good to include here why the airports have been closed. I've realised that I haven't put why the airports have closed or have been closed. Someone asked a second ago. Yeah, they're both good. So I would like to, I definitely want the person writing this essay to include that information. So let's include it. So I'm sure that you've heard that all the airports in Budapest have closed. This means that my flight has been cancelled, so I'm really sorry, but we must make other arrangements. So the airport closures are happening all over the world. Because of the pandemic, yeah? You could say the flu pandemic or the coronavirus pandemic or something like that if you want to be really specific. In fact, I even recommend that you be specific. Being specific is a good thing. It makes your essay concrete and it makes it more realistic. So let's change it to, if you like, that because of the coronavirus pandemic, yeah? So I would probably go on now to say, to explain that this is why I can't go to a different airport, because I'm sure that Hungarians are able to go to Austria or some other nearby country and just use those airports to get to Canada. But because because the airport closures are happening all over the world, I can't. And so let's explain that. Let's say the airport closures are happening all over the world because of the coronavirus pandemic. Let's make this a semicolon and then use a conjunctive adverb. Therefore, I mean, having said that, I would be careful here, because therefore is quite a formal word. It sounds quite formal to me, and this is the informal letter. So I think I might have second thoughts here and not use therefore. Let's use that's why. Or something like that, yeah? You're going to use something a little bit less formal. We don't want it sounding too formal. This is a friend, Anna, and so we want some pretty much everyday standard English. And by the way, if you want informal words, of course, do use a lot of phrasal verbs, and you can find more phrasal verbs in my book, which you can buy on Amazon or on my website. But the airport closures are happening all over the world because of the coronavirus pandemic, and that's why I can't find a flight from another airport. Okay, and I'd say that that's a nice, clear, full answer for explaining the important event. Yeah, we've done everything here, and we've apologised as well. You know, so I'm really sorry, but we must make other arrangements. There's your apology. And the airport closures are happening all over the world because of the coronavirus pandemic. And that's why I can't find a flight from another airport. Now that's really clear. You've made it very clear why there's no way you're going to Canada in April. And you've apologised, and Anna's, put yourself in the position of the person receiving the letter for IELTS, especially for informal letter. Remember that you get marks for, does the letter have the desired effect? Will it have the right effect on the reader? And so put yourself in Anna's position, and I'm sure you'd agree that you would understand that this person, there's nothing they could do. This important event, the pandemic, has meant that there's no way they're coming to Canada. And so you're going to get a high mark for, will it have the desired effect on the reader? So I'm going to take this part off, and you'll just have to pause the video or something like that if you want to get it down. But let's go on to suggesting new arrangements now. We've got the first main body of the letter as explaining the important event and apologising for situation. Now let's go on to suggesting other arrangements. So I'm going to start a new paragraph with something like, So, how are you all coping in Canada? You know, I'd quite like to know how Anna's doing in light of all this news about coronavirus pandemic. So perhaps we could ask something like, or start with something like, I hope. Yeah, and let's get rid of Dear Anna as well. So something like, I hope everyone in Canada isn't panicking. Yeah, I hope you're all doing well in Canada. I hope you're all getting on okay in Canada. I hope all your friends and family are coping in these difficult times, yeah? Now, I'm putting this in here just to show that this is your friend, yeah? Remember, you're talking to your friend, and it's got to be realistic that you're talking to a friend. And so you probably want to know, I hope everything's okay at your end, yeah? Everything's okay at my end, but I hope everything's okay at your end. I hope all your friends and family are coping in these difficult times. I would still love to come and visit. I would still love to come and visit later in the year. Now, perhaps you believe, as I do, that things will calm down in the future and planes will start going again, people will go back to work and that kind of thing. Certainly hope so anyway. And so you could put that in the next sentence. I would love to come and visit later in the year. I'm sure that the pandemic will peter out. Notice the phrasal verb. Yeah, I'm using these phrasal verbs because it is what we do in informal English. We use them all the time. And so please, if you want to know more about them, this one's in this book, please do get this book. But I'm sure that the pandemic will peter out over the course of the next few months. And when it does, the airports will open again. Yeah, notice that I'm going into the details here just because I really want to make it clear that I am suggesting a new arrangement. Yeah, it's very important. Okay, so over the course of the next few months, and when it does, the airports will open again. As soon as this happens, I will look for new tickets to Canada. Or perhaps instead of new tickets, I will look for cheap trips to Canada. I'm not going to use flights because I've already used that word, but I will look for cheap trips to Canada. Okay, something like this. Why open, not be opened? Again, people keep asking about ergative verbs. I just had close and now I've got open. Why open, not be opened? You really want to watch this video on ergative verbs, guys, if you're asking me about open and close and why it's not active, why it's passive. Watch this video on ergative verbs. You've probably never heard of ergative verbs because they're never in grammar books. So go and have a look at that video. Ergative verbs will explain to you why open and close seem to be the same in active and passive. Okay, so do watch that video. But okay, as soon as this happens, I will look for cheap trips to Canada. Now, I'm going to mention something about what I plan to do in Canada, just to make it really clear that I really want to come to Canada. And I want my friend Anna to know that. I want her to realise that I am serious, that I am coming, that this coronavirus pandemic is not going to stop me. As soon as it peters out, I will be there. And so blow over is an excellent word. Somebody's just suggested using that. That's an excellent phrasal verb to use in this letter. It sounds very informal and it sounds very nice. And so as soon as this all blows over, I will look for cheap trips to Canada. I really can't wait to go sightseeing with you. And to meet all your friends and family, yeah? And to meet all your relatives, because we've said friends and family, so let's use something different. And to meet all your relatives. How about all the relatives that I've heard so much about? Something like that, yeah? Or, oh, let's just make it all your relatives. And to meet all your relatives. We could say something now like when we think this is going to happen, because we mentioned April. And again, it's good to make the letter realistic, make it sound like it's a real letter. And in a real letter, you'll be mentioning dates, you'll be mentioning plans and arrangements. So we do need dates. So we had April. Let's suggest when this might happen. Now, I don't know about you guys out there, when you expect the coronavirus pandemic to peter out, to blow over. But I think it will be in a matter of weeks rather than months, personally. And so I'm going to put, I really can't wait to go sightseeing with you and to meet all your relatives. I expect, so we've already said over the course of the next few months, never contradict yourself. Always go back and see what you've already written, because it's actually quite easy to contradict yourself. And so if we say something like this, I expect that by June or July, I expect to know more. Okay, I expect to know more about possible flights in June or July. So I hope actually that it will finish before then, but I'm referring to this over the course of the next few months. So I expect to know more about possible flights in June or July, and then that just makes that agree with what I've already said. And it's important to not contradict yourself. Never contradict yourself. It never sounds good. So I expect to know more about possible flights in June or July. So I hope to see you in summer. Okay? And now we've got to finish the letter. Now you can say, I look forward to hearing from you. That's a very common one. Best regards, best wishes, something like that. You can also say something to her, a personal message like stay safe, or make sure you stay at home and don't go outside and catch the virus. Something like that. That's all good because it relates to the important event that you've already mentioned and that they wanted you to use as an excuse or a justification, let's say, for why you couldn't visit Canada. So let's do that. Let's say something like, stay safe and, what could we say? So I hope to see you in summer. Stay safe and be healthy. Best wishes, Dave. Yeah, something like that. Stay safe and be healthy. Best wishes, in fact, let's make that full stop. Best wishes, Dave. Okay, so that is how I would approach this particular task. I'd keep it conversational, keep it very simple, standard, everyday English, but make sure you answer those three things. That's the main thing you've got to do. You've got to answer all three of those things, and you've got to make sure it has the right effect on the reader, on Anna, that she reads it and she thinks, yep, fair enough, you won't be able to come. She accepts your apology, she understands it's not your fault, and that, okay, you can't come. And she accepts that you're suggesting some kind of new arrangement. Okay, so this is all we want for this part of the exam. Just make sure you're answering all the questions, and make sure you're doing it in an informal style, which will often mean phrasal verbs like blow over, somebody mentioned earlier, peter out, that kind of thing. Make sure that kind of everyday English is in there, and make sure that you follow the standard style, which is dear so-and-so, you know, dear Anna, or hi Anna. If it's informal letter, that's fine. And best wishes, you know, standard way of saying goodbye in a letter as well. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope that's been useful. But the main thing I really want to stress is make sure you answer all three questions clearly and in enough detail as well. Don't answer any of them in a vague way. Make it very clear so that anybody marking the paper has to admit, yes, you've answered all three questions. Okay, so that's all I've got for you about IELTS today, but I might be on a bit later with a few more lessons. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all soon.